Hi, I'm Brittany. I don't know about you, but I hate cleaning. My room is always messy and it really pisses my mom off. One day, she decided to invite me to a charity event. My parents were doing volunteer work and trying to raise funds for an animal shelter. Mom took a couple of steps into my room and tripped over the things scattered on the floor. As usual, she immediately got annoyed. Your room is a dump. Homeless people live in cleaner places. As a result, we had a big fight. I got angry, grabbed my jacket, and stormed out. I didn't want to go to the charity event anymore. After leaving home, I called my best friend Tina. We met in a cafe and I complained about my parents. I was so tired of them. That's when I suddenly got an idea. I decided to show my mom what the life of homeless people was really like. I decided to go to a poor neighborhood and take pictures of everything there. I dragged Tina with me. It was getting dark and wandering around this area felt a bit scary. All of a sudden, we noticed a man by the dumpsters. He was wrapped in an old blanket and sleeping on the ground. I came closer and took a few photos of him to show my mom later. That was how real homeless people lived. I was about to take another photo when the man suddenly woke up and sat up. Tina and I jumped back, surprised, and screamed. The homeless man also screamed and looked at us dumbfounded. Then he paused and asked uncertainly, "Do you have anything to eat?" I had a pack of cookies in my bag and I gave them to him. We got to talking. The man's name turned out to be Tom. He had nowhere to live and told us that he was often freezing at night and starving. I suddenly got another crazy idea. What if Mom saw him in real life and not just in a photo? Then she would definitely realize what being homeless meant and leave me alone. When I asked Tom to come with me, he was stunned. Tina was shocked as well and tried to dissuade me, but I stood firm. Soon enough, Tom and I came to my house. My mom was cooking something in the kitchen. "Do we have any food for my new friend?" Mom turned around and dropped the lid of the pot. I'd never seen her look so shocked before. Then Dad came into the kitchen and was also left speechless. Everyone looked terrified, even Tom. When my parents came back to their senses, they immediately demanded that I take Tom back. I couldn't help but mock them. "But you wanted me to do volunteer work with you so much. Well, here I am, helping a homeless person. Are you really gonna send him back now?" My parents didn't know what to say and silently exchanged glances. That's when I used my trump card. I hinted that they only did volunteer work to show off and get money. They were speechless. I brought Tom to my room and made a bed for him on the floor. He smelled awful, but I didn't send him to the shower so as not to make life easier for my parents. While Tom was settling in, I did my homework, or at least tried to. Chemistry was hard for me. I didn't understand anything, often gave up on doing homework, and my teacher had already complained to the principal about me. Tom suddenly came up to me and looked at my textbook. "Oh, this is my favorite subject." I didn't take him seriously when he offered to help, but I still let him try. Tom quickly wrote down the solution and I copied it. Even if it was wrong, it was better than nothing. The next day, the teacher called me to the blackboard. I wrote the solution on it and I thought I would get a bad mark as usual. It might be hard to believe, but Tom had nailed it. I got an excellent mark in chemistry for the very first time. The teacher looked at me suspiciously and said that we would be writing a test the next day. During the big break, I went to the cafeteria in a great mood, but then something ruined it. I saw my boyfriend Harry flirting with another girl. He was hugging her and whispering something in her ear. I got terribly angry. It wasn't the first time that happened. Girls always flocked around him and he enjoyed it. I asked him what he thought he was doing, and he said that girl was only a friend. By the way, my parents are leaving tonight. Come over. I'm throwing a pool party. I was angry and wanted to refuse, but then got a better idea. Do you mind if I bring a friend?" Harry nodded, surprised. Then Tina pulled me aside and asked me which friend I meant. I smiled slyly and promised it would be fun. At home, I found Tom doing something weird. He had filled our tub with water and was playing with boats and giggling. When he noticed me, he looked surprised. "Who are you?" Yeah, it seemed like he wasn't right in the head. I had to remind him that we had met the previous day and that he now lived with me. After that, I went to my room and barely recognized it. Tom told me that he had cleaned up while I was gone. I was shocked. That was very nice of him. In the evening, Tom and I went to the party. Harry opened the door and just stared at Tom. I introduced him as my new friend, and my boyfriend looked even more stunned. When we came to the pool, all my friends were speechless as well. At first, Tom was acting quietly and politely, but then he came up to the pool and it was a complete disaster. "Wow, a pool! Wee! Ha!" He shouted loudly and dived in without taking his clothes off. Everyone who was swimming at the time immediately screamed and got out of the water. Nobody wanted to swim in a pool with a homeless guy. Tom surfaced, spat out water, and suggested we play with boats, looking satisfied. I couldn't help but laugh. Oddly enough, I wasn't the only one. Tina and a funny guy called Zach joined me. Tom acted weird and baffled us all evening. He would lie down on the grass, then chase everyone, or try diving into a life ring. The party didn't go the way Harry had wanted it to. That was exactly what I was hoping for. My revenge was a success. Are you crazy? Why did you bring this bearded weirdo here? I just laughed. I was having so much fun. Zach was too. He even got along with Tom, and they went swimming together. When we got home, Mom sent Tom upstairs and brought me to the living room. She demanded that I kick the tramp out of our house. My parents had also noticed that Tom was a weirdo, and that bothered them. I sarcastically asked them how their volunteer work was going and what would happen if people found out that they had kicked a poor homeless man out. Mom wanted to say something, but Dad broke in. Well, he can stay here a little longer, but we have a very important meeting tomorrow, and you have to be there. If we come as a family, we will make a good impression on the sponsors. I didn't want to go, but eventually had to agree. The next day, I decided to bring Tom to school with me. I couldn't fail the chemistry test, and my bearded friend could help. The teacher always gave us tasks that weren't on the internet, so I was going to cheat. Chemistry was the first class that day. I came early on purpose, hid Tom in the staff room, and asked him not to go anywhere. During the test, I asked for permission to go to the toilet and went to find Tom, but he wasn't where I'd left him. I was terrified. Where'd he gone off to? I looked for him all over the school and finally saw Tom talking to some teacher. It might be hard to believe, but he was acting like a real gentleman. He was polite and courteous. He even kissed her hand goodbye. After she had left, I brought Tom back and asked him to solve the tasks. He quickly did it. When I came back to class, the teacher looked suspicious. Why were you gone for so long? Before I could answer, we heard screaming. A couple of my classmates looked out the window and roared with laughter. Tom was running off the porch of the school, and an angry cleaning lady was chasing after him. Damn it! She had probably found him in the staff room. I barely sat until the end of the lesson and ran outside. Harry caught up to me by the door. Are you completely crazy? Why did you bring this homeless man to school? You should be ashamed of yourself. His words made me mad. What, are you embarrassed to be around me? Then don't bother. I had no important classes after chemistry and decided to leave. I found Tom in the schoolyard and suggested we go for a walk. As we walked, he acted like a child. Then he asked me for ice cream and ran towards the swings. After that, he wanted to go to an amusement park, but I didn't have any money with me. At some point, Tom started talking about science and philosophy. His mood swings seemed strange, but spending time with him was fun. In the evening, I called my mom and said I would be a little late for the event. I brought Tom with me. My parents were giving a speech on stage, and I dragged Tom with me. You should have seen their faces. They were so stunned they didn't even say anything. My parents are really kind people. They let a homeless guy stay with us and are taking care of him. He used to sleep on the street, and now we live under the same roof. Everyone felt sorry for Tom, and my parents had no choice but to play along. I was looking around the hall when I suddenly noticed a woman staring at us strangely. After the event, my parents threw a fit. We were arguing loudly, and Tom heard us. He came up to us looking quite serious. I'll leave if I'm a bother. You don't have to fight because of me. My parents didn't say anything. I took Tom's hand and brought him home. However, when I woke up the next morning, Tom wasn't in my room. He wasn't in the house at all. I thought my parents had kicked him out and asked them about it. They said they hadn't done anything and hadn't seen Tom since the previous evening. They looked suspiciously happy. It felt like they were hiding something. At school, I worried and hoped that Tom would be back for lunch. What if something happened to him? I got a good mark on the chemistry test, but even that didn't make me happy. After school, Harry suddenly came up to me. He apologized for acting rude and asked me out on a date. I asked him to wait and called my mom. Turned out that Tom still hadn't showed up. I didn't have time for a date. Listen, my friend has gone missing. Could we look for him together? Are you running around with that homeless guy again? You're definitely crazy. You care about him more than me. I didn't want to waste time arguing and asked Tina to come with me. As we were leaving school, Zach suddenly caught up to us. He had overheard my talk with Harry and wanted to help. We walked around the city center and visited all the places Tom and I had gone to. We even went to the poor district where we had first met, but he was nowhere to be found. Did he say anything? Did he mention any places he wanted to go to? I thought back to our conversations and suddenly remembered something. Of course. The last time we had gone for a walk, Tom had wanted to go to the amusement park. We went there and saw a commotion. A police car was parked by the entrance and a lot of people were discussing something. They were talking about some weirdo somehow going on all the rides without paying. Then I noticed Tom. The cops had pinned his arms and were leading him to their car. I ran up to them and asked them to let him go. I said he was my uncle and he wasn't right in the head. A park employee immediately demanded that I pay for all his rides. I didn't have enough money, but Zach and Tina pitched in. When Tom and I came back home, I saw my parents. They looked happy. They asked us to go with them to another event. The weirdest thing was that they didn't mind bringing Tom along. Dad even lent him his suit. Seemed suspicious to me, but I still agreed. My parents went up on stage and Mom made a speech again. You already know Tom's story. By a lucky chance, we managed to find his relatives. Dad brought the woman I had noticed the day before on stage. She turned out to be Tom's sister. That's why she had been looking at us like that. I didn't recognize Tom right away yesterday. He has grown and changed so much. My brother used to be a talented scientist, but a few years ago, he suffered a serious head injury. After that, he started to act weird and undergo treatment. But one day, Tom ran away, and we couldn't find him for a long time. Everyone was touched by the happy reunion, especially the sponsors who agreed to fund my parents' project. I was the only one upset because I didn't want to part with Tom. I said goodbye, and that woman took him away. At home, I had a fight with my parents again. Your projects are a hoax. You only do it all for money. And you never cared about Tom. You just wanted to get rid of him. Mom said that wasn't true. Yes, we make money, but why can't we mix business with pleasure? You're being selfish. Tom has found his home again, and he will be much happier there. Deep down, I knew that my mom was right, but I didn't want to admit it. A couple of days later, Harry came up to me again. He had found out about Tom's relatives and wanted to make up, but I didn't need that. The way he started treating the homeless guy said a lot about him, but I started dating Zach. He turned out to be a really nice guy. One day, we were taking a walk in the park when we suddenly saw Tom. He was walking arm in arm with his sister and looked happy. I was still a little sad, but I was glad he was doing well. By the way, I've started regularly cleaning up my room, not because of my parents, but because Tom had cleaned it up that one time. Living in a clean room is much nicer after all. Do you often clean up, or do you not bother? Write in the comments down below.